can. Can you hear me?
I can indeed.
Oh, nice. That was easy.
Here you go. That's pretty cool.
It took me a few minutes. I had to install a client or something.
Yeah, it's probably normally there's a plug-in of some description.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. But that's pretty cool.
Cool.
There you go. How are you doing, man?
I can't complain. I'm doing well. How are you?
Not too bad. It's nice, sunny, blue sky over here in Ireland. Blue sky is a rare thing, really rare thing.
I've heard that.
Yeah, it is. But when it is,
I work with somebody in Ireland.
oh yeah,
And and I always ask him because I was really shocked when I heard that it doesn't snow over there. I guess I never knew that, or it rarely snows. Is that correct?
rarely snows. Yeah, I mean, if it does snow, the whole country comes to a total stop. The schools are closed. Even if you get this much snow,
Yeah.
you would laugh at it. I mean, we're just wholly unprepared for it. It's great. I love the chaos of it because it's kind of like everybody's agreed, let's not invest in any of the infrastructure or any of the machinery to force us all to go to work. Let's just take these. They happen once every maybe 5, 6, 7 years. And can we just take these days off? Yeah.
Exactly. Just hit the pause button for a little while and just let this all take care of itself.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we're forced to try to drive through it when we probably shouldn't be and deal with it, and it's terrible. I can't stand the winters here. It's cold and we get feet of snow. It's just. But my buddy in Ireland, and he told me that I was surprised. But he said, like you were saying, that it's rare when you get a nice, beautiful, sunny day too, and it's nice here today too. But overall, it just seems like it's a steady overcast, about 60 degrees
And
for Ireland.
For Ireland, yeah. Oh man, I mean, it's the greatest country when the sun is shining. And I'd say if we had warm weather, everybody would come here because we're an island. It's just stunning. And the whole place lights up when the sun is out. It's just a rarity. We probably got a week of really warm weather this year, a week. So
really? Wow, no kidding.
Yeah.
Well,
what are you going to do?
It's used to it.
Yeah. And so you're based in
I'm in New England. I'm actually in Connecticut.
Connecticut. Okay, yeah, I actually have Connecticut's big. So I was going to say I have some cousins there, but you're not going to know them, obviously.
No, I'm in the southeast corner of the state, right next to Rhode Island. I'm about 2 hours right in between Boston and New York, right in the middle.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah, so we get the full-blown seasons here: hot summers, cold winters, spring and fall, which is very nice. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Can't complain.
Yeah, it is. Well, I was there a couple of years ago. It is kind of some parts of it are it's countryside. It's like trees and landscape and proper.
Yes.
Yeah, it's such a contrast when you drive out in New York and the humongousness of New York, and then you get Connecticut and the parts I was in was just countryside.
Yeah. And I think people are surprised at that. Other people that have come to here that have never been here before are surprised at how wooded it is and how, country it is and rock walls and things like that. And they don't expect it at all. They think it's just a big suburb of New York.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's not. It's, we have trees and, we're somewhat of our own state.
Yeah. And tell me this: how have you how did you stumble upon this podcast of mine?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
It's well, it's honestly it's my YouTube feed, and as soon as I started, getting into videos, particularly non-duality, I guess I just kind of stumbled into them. I don't even know exactly how, but your videos kept popping up, and I think it was 0 and 1 that first got my attention, and which is a great film, great title by the way. I love the title. Um, and that showed up, and I was watching. Oh, you know what it was? The first one that really came up was Rupert Spira.
Yeah, I know of. Yeah,
Yeah, and he has a lot of content out there, and he was really my first, I guess, introduction, if you will, into non-duality and topics. Which, in hindsight, which is a good thing. I don't know if you've seen a lot of his videos, but he takes a he takes a very gentle approach in introducing people to the topic.
yeah,
And, in contrast to like um, Tony Parsons or Jim Newman, who are much more direct and in your face and uncompromising,
yeah,
whereas Rupert is a little more gentle. And I started watching a lot of his videos. I found them extremely fascinating, and the feed grew, and it started picking up all these things, and then I stumbled on I saw Zero and One, and then I started looking at your channel, and I was just amazed at the amount of content that you had. By far, of anybody that's putting out videos on this subject, which, as and we all know, is very difficult to do.
yeah.
You're just cranking this stuff out, which is amazing. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, God, this guy it talks about it all day, every day. It must drive him nuts, because I got to take a break once in a while, because it starts
Yeah,
to drive me nuts. And we've all hit that point where, like, that's it. It's just driving me nuts. I'm not going to watch another non-duality video again. I just can't take it anymore. And then a
yeah,
day later, sure enough, there you are watching more videos, and that's how I kind of and went. And I've seen a lot of the stuff that Boris does, Dream Bus, and Being Here, and those movies as well, which are
yeah,
all great movies too.
yeah. Bart's pretty amazing filmmaker. He's just got a beautiful eye, and he's got great, great skills, camera
Well, and you
skills.
and your yeah, he does, and your movies are similar in the way they're the Dream Bus movie and your movie, and uh, your I think you did it after Zero and One. It was Nothingness equals E equals MC squared,
Yes, yeah,
which
yeah.
is like another short film. Yeah, and I love those movies. Well, actually, the movies with you in them, and Boris's second movie, I think, what was it? Being Here, where he had his buddy in there,
Charles, yeah,
Charles. Yes, and I love the tension between,
yeah,
like, you and the people you're interviewing, and Charles, in his movies, just sitting there, just getting so frustrated and just
yeah.
scratching his head, and ready to claw his eyes out. And that's how I feel. I can relate to that portion of it. That's why they're so fascinating.
Yeah, but it's kind of funny in a way that if that was anything else, any other, we'd say, subject, you would have dropped it like a long time ago. Do you know what I mean? You would have moved on from it. You would have kind of gone, okay, and then yet it's still come
Yeah,
back.
I do. That's really interesting, because just like other people who are interested in this material, or the spirituality, I guess, or this topic, I got the bookshelf full of every book that you probably have on your bookshelf. We all got the same, literally probably the same bookshelf, all the
Yeah,
same books. We've all read through them all. And you're right. This for whatever reason, this particular topic, which is the hardest one to discuss, though, is just the most fascinating, though. And like I said, I've never. Usually, when I'm done with something, I'm done with it, and I don't ever find myself going back. Or it might be years later, I'll reread a part of a book that I thought of. But this is just constantly, like, in my head or in my face almost, and it's almost addicting. I
yeah.
don't know if that's the right word. But I've never experienced that before either.
Well, I mean, it's like a drug where you get absolutely nothing, and yet you're coming back for the drug.
Yeah,
You're coming back for
yeah,
a hit, and actually you've got nothing. You really, really
and
have got nothing. It's not like your understanding has suddenly advanced or uh, progressed in any way, shape, or form. And really, you should be just a case of, okay, I've enough now. I get what you're talking about, but obviously it's something in the mind. The mind is the one subject the mind cannot get, and the mind keeps going back to go,
E-
okay, what is it though then? But what am I not getting? Because
Yeah,
it just can't not
exactly.
get things. That's what it does, like dog with bone, usually.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think you just described it perfectly. The other material, I feel like I was able to grasp. So once you feel like you've understood something, you get bored with it,
Yeah,
right? And then here we are now with this topic that you're literally, I mean, everybody tells you you're never going to get this.
yeah,
And that just drives you even more insane, right?
yeah,
And so that just the mind is so, it's so laser focused like that when it, especially when somebody tells you you're never going to get this. It's almost like that laser beam just intensifies, like, I'm going to show you
yeah.
I
I'm
am
going to
going to
get
get
this.
this.
But that, like I was talking to Robert Hearn there yesterday and the day before, and he was kind of talking about somebody who went to Africa, and by day three of looking at the giraffes, they were bored because they knew the giraffe, and you know, I know the giraffe, and I don't need to see it anymore. I've enough. And but the
Yeah.
thing with this subject seems to be because you can't know it. So then the brain obviously just keeps coming back to the door, going, "Okay, but no, I can know it." And
Yes.
maybe you know you hear about that the brain keeps going until the brain gives up. But
Yes.
it is interesting, yeah. It's just when you described there the coming back to it, I know exactly what that is like. I'm never doing another podcast in non-duality ever again. I've said to myself.
Yeah. And here you are cranking them out. Well, you had like two yesterday, I think, two in one day.
Yeah.
You're just cranking them out like crazy,
Yeah, two
which is great.
Tuesday or two podcast Tuesday or podcast something anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it kind of goes though. I mean, it can be I'll do nothing for 3 or 4 weeks, or then something will come along. And tell me this: how did it come about that you found yourself? You, you found Rupert Spira, but were you looking for something when you were looking for Rupert Spira?
I think I've always, and it sounds silly, but I guess I watch a lot of YouTube. But I've always got like the typical content that I might watch on YouTube, like comedy shows or documentaries or something like that. But I always have this steady, I guess, feed of spiritual speakers or things of that nature or science. I think I came across also that channel Science and Non-Duality,
Yeah,
SAND, I think it's called. And it it was just like I guess it was a steady progression, and eventually maybe I did a search for consciousness in the YouTube search or something like that, and literally it was just and one of Rupert's videos showed up, and it was just like a waterfall since then. And then it was I want to say it was just kind of dumb luck maybe. And then as I got into it though, and I started listening and reading up on it, I guess this has been pretty active for going on about a year now. And the more I learn about it, and like you say often how you can learn to speak the language and understand what people are trying to say. I've realized that looking back on my other, looking back on my bookshelf, I've always been, I guess, mostly interested in those topics that were somewhat related to non-duality. They never said it, but I have books from Krishnamurti on there. I have obviously Power of Now on there, which I think are, and a few others like Dancing Woolly Masters and Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukav. I think I'm saying his name correctly. But they're very non-dual. And Alan Watts. Oh, that's probably what it was the most. I'm a huge Alan Watts fan.
yeah,
And I watch a ton of there's so much of his audio on YouTube. And that's
Yeah.
probably what made the connection to Rupert and went down that rabbit hole. And I think it's all, it's non-dual related, though they don't say it as expressly or as, directly as Rupert does or the other folks do, but they're still talking about it. They
Yeah.
just express it in a different way. Even Alan watched, and you listen to it, just hours and hours of his audio out there. And
Yeah. He's
and
quite
and I agree,
poetic, in fairness. He's very
he
poetic.
is.
Yeah.
He's extremely entertaining, and I really wish I had the opportunity to go to one of his lectures. But it just listening to what he says, though, he's always pointing towards that, though he never really says it, and he takes a lot of roundabout ways to get there. He's very much into Zen Buddhism and his watercourse way and things of that nature. But that's probably how I kind of tumbled into it. But then, like I said, once I got there, I couldn't let go. It was like I said, it was like a drug that I found,
Mm.
and it was just, and like I said, I got gently introduced to it with Rupert, which I found his lectures and meditation sessions very fascinating. And then I remember I saw my first Tony Parsons video, and I turned it off in 5 minutes. I'm like, this guy is just he's driving me nuts. I can't take. He's too he's too direct. He's too uncompromising. Like, he's just like, you're not there. There's nothing you can do about it. This is all just the biggest joke in town. And it was too much too fast. And I just slowly I appreciate what he is saying more, and I understand it more. But you can't, or at least somebody who's new to the subject, in my opinion, can't go to a Tony Parsons lecture and just expect to not walk out in 5 minutes, which I assume people probably do,
Yeah.
um, at his lectures. And I think Jim Newman, like you interviewed, is I think has the same very uncompromising message. Kenneth to some degree as well. But then you get these other, or at least Rupert. I guess I don't know too many of them, but he takes a more subtle, I want to say, approach to the topic, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I know it's funny. I obviously that's probably why I wasn't interested too much in Rupert. 'Cause they seem to be around too many words going around it. But I mean, it's not that that was. It's just that maybe I just didn't. It didn't appeal to me. But like when I remember going to see Tony Parsons, and I went on a Friday night, and it was an hour and a half, and I'm sure I've said this so many times before, but I mean, I thought this is an absolute load of bullshit. I have been meditating and I have been doing this, and you're saying to me, and you're not even saying to me, there's nothing I can do. You're saying to me, there is no one there and doing anything, and you've never done anything,
Yeah,
um, and then I because it was so uncompromising and the way he gave absolutely nothing for whatever reason, in the same breath of being annoyed, the exhale was, well, you could actually be stoned for doing what you're doing, for standing up there and giving so little and not feeding the human story. That
yeah,
then I thought that was and I think I said to him, it felt like that was love. And when I said that to him, he said, it's not the love you think, though, it's unconditional. But that's what I felt like, because really, who's getting anything in the meeting? And it's the only place where you go where the story is starved. But then really I don't think people want to bring their story. Really, they don't want to carry the story places. And not really. Because if they wanted to bring the story everywhere about them and their lives, they wouldn't be interested in
they
this.
probably wouldn't be at that meeting,
They probably wouldn't be. Yeah, they want a
or
break
they
from it.
would leave pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I think I agree, and it's that story but it's so it, it, it's so hard. I guess it's the only word I can come up with, but it's so hard to give up the story. And a lot of your podcasts, and and I like this, and I agree with you 100%. You always are talking about how people are pretending,
Mm,
and I say the same thing. I feel like I'm acting all the time, and
yeah,
that's basically your story.
yeah,
You're playing a role. You're acting. There's people that say all of life is acting. I personally agree, or pretending, or whatever you want to call it. Like there's nothing, there's nothing truly, at least the message that I hear is that there's nothing truly sincere here. We all put our mask on. You put your Frank mask on every morning. I put my Jim mask on, and we go out and act a day away. How
yeah.
we're supposed to act, and the confronting messages, they're basically calling our bluff, saying, that's total bullshit. It's total bullshit. So just drop it and see what happens. But obviously that's to people who don't buy into that, the fact that they're acting, who actually believe the story. That's absurdly and I can totally get why people would just get up and walk away or get angry, even probably physically angry. That how dare you? Like you said that. I think you and Kenneth had that conversation. Like, how you dare you suggest that I'm not actually me? It's an affront to them.
Yeah, well, and then in that instance, really what they're looking for is to make their story better. And so they want to keep the story that they've got really, but just can we tweak it a little bit so I can get rid of all the negative stuff and just keep the positive stuff and live in the bliss
Yeah,
state or whatever the fuck. But that seems to be
yeah.
the big, and what, maybe, I mean, it depends. So, like, can people go to the meeting and they absolutely hate them, but others can go and just because none of that's entertained. Some people are. I remember going there and wanting to just fall asleep, so exhausted, just this overwhelming sense of exhaustion, killer exhaustion, and maybe it's because I don't know. It is. They talk about the energetic thing. I think the energetic thing is down to the weight of that story being carried around everywhere. The reality is, even the people up in the room, whoever it is, nobody has a clue. I mean, that's the. How can you have a clue? Like,
Right. And they freely admit that.
yeah,
So, and I think if you're sitting in the audience, you're almost like, well, what am I doing here then? You're telling me you don't have a clue. You're telling me that everything is bullshit at the end of the day. So you're right. You're really left with nothing. They're getting nothing out of it. The audience is getting nothing out of it.
yeah.
It's it's very paradoxical, I guess, in that sense. And at the same time, though, I mean, people still go. They still show up. They're still having these meetings,
It, well,
and they're still going there.
it seems to be the only place that you can go to where the pretending stops. It's the only place to. But even still, like, I mean, the reality is to start. But you could say people start with this is it, and that to me
Hmm.
resonates. This is it, and then everything else about falling away and me falling away and all of the liberation and all that. It's impossible for a person not to hear that that is the end game or there's a reward. It's impossible not to, even though you hear there is no liberation. You, when this is seen, when you hear when this is seen, it's seen that there was no liberation and there was never anybody doing anything. You just don't want to. You don't
Yeah.
go with that part. You just go, okay. I don't know what you mean. So just gonna let's just go back to the part which seems like an action, which is I can fall away.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. You attach yourself to pieces that make sense, that your mind can make sense out of, right? Or that your mind can intellectually grasp, and you run with that stuff. And then all the truly uncompromising message, the part that that, like you just stated, you tend to want to try to ignore, and you get frustrated because you keep hearing those same things, right? When this is seen, this is all there is. And I th- I think this is it. To your point, to me, is the best, as far as using language, is the best message. Literally those three words.
Yeah.
Like, this is it. Like, you can just sit there and just start and end the meeting with that. But of course, people want more and they want to discuss it more. But the more you talk about it, like you were saying, that you attach onto these other phrases, and it just compounds, at least for me, the confusion. And they're, I'm getting to the point where these words and these phrases are just, they're starting to lose all meaning. Like
Yeah.
if I hear the word apparently, one more time, it just drives me nuts. Like when you talk with Kenneth, I think he uses apparently in probably almost every sentence that he says. And it's like I don't know what that means anymore, because if everything is apparent, then you're saying that there literally is nothing that really happens, which he does say. But it's just so hard because everybody says that apparently this, apparently, and it's
But if I was to say to you and ask you the question, well, what is happening then?
what is happening then. Silence. That's the only thing that came to my head. Silence. Silence is in um, not just audio silence, but silence. Uh, silence is in what is happening right now. As soon as you utter a syllable or a word to try to describe what is happening right now, you've missed it. You've already missed it. So that's the only thing I can say. It's what is right now is it's just silence, because you can't. And it's amazing, Frank. Like we come up with all these constructs and these conversations that we have, to try to set the scene for our lives and our acting and our roles in life and what we're supposed to do to try to get out of what is right now, which is nothing in silence. And we live in that, I don't know, I want to call it a delusion, and we go about our lives with that framework, and we go about in the delusion, that we're not just right now in silence, but at the same time, literally, this is the only place we can ever be, and the only place we have ever been, right? Is in this, you know, right now silence thing right now. That's the only place you ever are. But but I think it's again, I'm at a loss already for words.
Well, you
You know
see
what I
that,
mean though?
but that's the beginning and end of it, though. I think you see the problem is, oops, sorry, give me 1 second.
Sure.
Microphone. Um, I don't know if there's any more. I mean, to me, that's the beginning and end of it. Than not saying a word, because then you can even sense yourself the moment. It's like when whatever happened when we were talking there, like all the water goes out of the sink. That seems to be the image that comes into my mind, and it's empty, and there's nothing to be said, and then it suddenly just reboots again, where it goes, but whatever. But I,
Hmm.
you see, that's why it's. I don't know, like, but to me, it seems it's self-evident, because the problem is the story, the aberration that it's not this reboots immediately, but because in this there's no place for the story, because where do you go to? It's just
Right.
the constant thing is that everywhere, as far as I can see, there's this agreement that the story is reality, and so everything extends away. And like, I mean, you do hear time and time again that you have to step out of it in order to talk about it, but that's still it happening too. So
Yeah.
actually the question, the thing is, it's unavoidable. Everything is unavoidable. What we're just talking about is this, and that's as uncompromising, or there's just nothing else to be said. Even I remember I sat with a guy called Leo Hortang, a man I had been around the fucking houses, non-duality expert at nothing, the worst subject in the world to have somehow my head to be grabbed by. But I remember sitting in a cafe with Leo poor thing. And he wrote the book Awakening to the Dream, which is probably, of all the books that you can read, the most beautiful of them all. And
Mm,
he he was saying to me, as we were having a cup of coffee and some apple strudel, and uh, he was I had ordered the apple strudel, and he was nicking some of mine, and he said, "This is it. You get way more from Tony Parsons than you will from me. This is it. This is the beginning and end of
yeah.
it. Not intellectually, the beginning and end of it, but this is it." And it's so unsatisfying for a mind that has to keep coming back to hear this is it.
Yes. Yes. And it's unsatisfying because at least I think, um, the mind takes it literally takes too long. Like it takes time and energy, to keep feeding your story and living and acting, figuring out what you're going to do next, say next to complete the story. Whereas now is so immediate, n- literally nothing can exist right now, right? There's, like I said, was saying, as soon as you even utter a syllable or think a thought or try to act, it's gone. And so so I get this is it. To me, that's how it makes sense. Um, and once, but at the same time, you're left with nothing. Again, you're kind of left with silence. So it's almost like, okay, and it's it feels right, and at the same time, you're like, well, where's the reward? Because there's
Yeah.
there's nothing there, and you never get it, it's it's difficult. I think that's why it's difficult to communicate to other people. It's difficult just to have a conversation about it with somebody not familiar with the subject. Forget about it. Honestly, this is this is the first conversation I've had about non-duality with anyone. I
Yeah.
haven't discussed the thought or the ideas with anybody else. It's just too difficult of a subject to broach with anybody who's not familiar with it. And I haven't, I don't, there isn't meetings around me or anything like that that I've been able to attend. So this is it. Or I mean, my first conversation about it, which is extremely fascinating. And it's I was watching another video along these lines. It was given by a professor. I think he might have had a doctor, but as a professor at a university of philosophy. That was
Mm.
his degree. And he's and he was making a joke about his specialty in philosophy is consciousness. And usually the other philosophers in the room that he's having a meeting with shut down immediately because nobody wants to hear that. Well, not so much that nobody wants to hear that. They're not really interested in what he has to say because he said, I can't talk to people about the philosophy of consciousness or even consciousness itself because everybody is an expert in it. Everybody thinks they're an expert in it, right? Nobody, how are you going to philosophize with me about consciousness? And I know I'm conscious. I have my own, and it's something you can't even. It's just an immediate affront to people because you're going to tell them, well, consciousness works like this, and it has these characteristics, and this is what I've learned about it in my studies. And they'll immediately, since everybody's an expert, even non-philosophers are an expert because we all live all day long and within our brains or in our heads or within our consciousness, that you're in no position to tell me anything. So it's that just rang very true to me, how this is even more such a difficult thing to discuss, as you can't discuss it in the first place because it's beyond discussion. And then when you try to frame it up like within the framework of philosophy, it's still even difficult to talk about because everybody's an expert. Does
Yeah,
that
and I
make
think,
sense?
well, it does. I mean, it does because I think, well, to me, the idea anyway of experts everywhere, everybody seems to be an expert on everything, and everybody seems to think that words
That's
are
true as
important.
well.
Like, I mean,
Sure.
where does consciousness begin and consciousness end? Where, I mean, what we're talking about is talking. We're talking about the immediacy of the sounds and this happening. So, in order to talk about that, it would seem that you can step a step away or you talk around it. But even then, it's unavoidable.
Hmm.
Where can you go? Even this idea of stepping out of it. Where is the stepping out of anything to talk about? If you're really having a conversation, you're having a conversation about the very fact that there's a conversation happening. That's the conversation.
Yeah.
And that's an
Yeah.
absolute, that you're talking about the isness of this thing, fucking this, right? So if we're having a conversation about that, and that includes the voice boxes, where the fuck do you go with it? All you can ever do is go, I mean, you can just do rah 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 rah, and another person go rah 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 rah, and
Yeah.
it's just somehow we give
Would there be
meaning.
any difference?
Well, we give meaning to, okay, there's consciousness because I am conscious of, or not conscious of, or whatever. It's still it's still a word that
Yep.
is not it's not a reality. It suggests, suggests it's fine. It's still, we're talking about this happening, and even the idea of death, of life, of birth, of all of that. It's still, everybody seems to know about all that, those things, and that they're real things. And obviously, you're going to die, and apparently, you are born, even though for both events, you probably won't have much say in them,
Yeah. And they only apparently
remember.
happen.
Um, yeah, I don't even know what happens, obviously, about. I mean, the thing is, you just don't know about either or. And
No.
uh, yeah,
No, and nobody will. And I was so let me ask you, do you think consciousness is fundamental? Fundamental in the sense that it's absolutely fundamental to, I'm just going to say, life.
see, I can't even play with those words because if what we're talking about is this happening, and within then this happening, it appears like there's words that come about to try to uncover or discover what this happening is. And one of those words that's held up is consciousness. And to me, I kind of go, okay, well, where does the beginning and end of that consciousness? Is consciousness a description or a label for this happening? Is that what that is? It's still, is that what consciousness is when they talk about consciousness being fundamental? Where are we talking about before the fact that some this thing is happening? So
Yes. So it is in that regard. I think what you're getting at is it's prior. It to me, it feels like it's prior to everything. Absolutely prior. There's you can't go back any further. I guess, or at least in my experience, when I try not to put words on it, when I try to just sit and I guess feel, consciousness. There's nothing prior, and there's nothing after either, right? Because once you start going after, that's when the story comes in. That's when you start acting. So you're stuck here with this consciousness where, uh, again, I mean that's the word I guess I can use, where there or you could just say the thing that there is nothing prior to. It's the start, and everything else precedes that, or not precedes it, but follows after that. And I asked you just because I was listening to a lecture last night from a biologist who was debating with the audience on whether or not biological life gives rise to consciousness, or consciousness gave rise to biological life. Like, consciousness is a phenomenon of being alive, of having living physical body, or is it the other way around? Did consciousness precede that? And it's very interesting to think about in an academic sense. But to your point, you get to the point where the words start to not mean anything anymore, and you get to the point where you throw your arms up. Nobody's ever going to answer that question. So all I have at the end of the day is I guess I just want to call it my gut feeling that consciousness precedes all, and it seems to me it is the fundamental stuff of the universe, right? Because um, there I can't, like, you know, I guess watching the science of non-duality and getting it, and you go down those rabbit holes. You start listening to a lot of quantum physicists and things of that nature, and quantum mechanics and all that, and how they like to describe, how their whole purpose and their mission in life is to find the fundamental particles of nature. They're getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and they found what they think are these fundamental particles of nature. And then I think they lifted the last curtain and they found that there was nothing on the other side. um and that's their quest, that's their search. And when I heard that, it just rang, I don't know, something rang true to me, because they always ignore consciousness when they talk about this stuff, for some, or not all of them, but a lot of them do, because they don't know how to deal with it. So I try to apply that type of framework to my everyday life, that I'm just sitting here, and it seems that consciousness is just 100% fundamental to life, to the universe. I can't i can't i can't i can't get past that right now.
And can I ask you, do you think that is consciousness, does it require words?
No, God, no.
So consciousness doesn't require thoughts in this description of what consciousness is. It doesn't require um, thoughts in the brain to make it so. What you're talking about, consciousness, is another word for isness. Is that it, for this
um
happening thingy? This
yes,
oh,
yes, yes,
this,
that's it.
yeah. Okay, what's
That
your
that that's it, Frank. So, right, yes, you got it. That description that I just went into is right. It's isness. It's fundamental. It's prior to everything. It everything just rises up from that. So you could call it isness.
and
And
what
and
about
and those
what about nothing?
nothing. So I
I'm just
honestly,
curious.
no, that I'm so glad you brought that up, because honestly, I struggle with that one probably more than anything else. The nothing piece. When you talk to these people and they talk about everything and nothing and the nothingness, and I no, I have not been able to uh, deal with that yet. That's not the right word. I have not. I can't. I haven't been able to rationalize it. I know I'm not going to rationalize it, right? If I pay attention to what people are telling me. But the nothingness piece is superbly frustrating, because I I want to say that I understand it conceptually, and they say nothing or no thing, but that's what I struggle with the most. I'm glad you actually brought that up, because I feel like um
You see,
I'm
I mean, like, certain things come to my mind now, like, without all of the learnings and concepts and things we seem to have taken upon us, and as it taken as real, like time and being born on in 1975 and going to live till X amount and getting to here to there. Like life, the journey of life, as I said this yesterday, is almost an advertisement of itself. Like it's marketing for itself everywhere you go, that there is a place that we can get to one way or another, and that, it's advertising itself everywhere, that and reinforced in everything that you're there and this is real and that there is a place to get to. And then you see the only thing about all of every tiny little word is that it's just the words, I suppose, are absolutely irrelevant. Like, Every tiny word still, it's still like eating sand. Consciousness, or getting to the bottom of consciousness, or whatever, it's still just there for the brain to go, okay, I know consciousness now and get my head around that. But the thing that it can't do is turn around and look back. It can't do that because that's where everything begins. I think it's the end of the world then. Like, I had the sense the other day that this idea of even a life having, or not even having a life, but the idea of life and other and everything requires something beyond this to compare it to, life and death,
Yes.
being here, not being there, and everything, and even like this idea, say somebody, apparently is saying there is such a thing as liberation, but they say something like, well, nobody ever finds this. It's when the self collapse this is seen, or whatever the expression is. But this
Hmm.
idea, like, if there's only one happening, if there's only one happening, and there may be another happening somewhere else, but it's still only one. There's
Yes.
only, it's still, that will still be the other one, but it's still kind of this sort of energetic happening that appears, right? I don't know where the fuck I'm going with all this shit I'm saying now.
No, I
So,
think you're
but
making
but
a great point, Frank.
but there is no this can't be validated, or can't be, because there's no other, and in then no other, nothing is compared to. So that's why, they talk about the good and bad. This is midnight in the garden of good and evil, right here. This is just 1 minute to midnight in the garden of good and evil, because really it requires something to step out of this happening to say that's good and that's bad. And like, don't even get me started on what's good and bad, because we'd be here all night. There's so much shit. But what we're talking to is the happening. Now, there might be a scientist talking about or loads of scientists studying this happening, and that's great. Um, but it's still a pursuit of the brain trying to get to know how it's happening. It's a brain
Yes.
pursuit, whereas, but that's still the happening, though. It
Yes,
seems
it
that
all is.
within the happening, it appears like there is a happening of somebody who feels separate from this happening, studying it and wanting to name it. That's still that
Yes.
this
And
fucking.
that's all it, right? And I think you you drew a nice picture there, because I'm still trying to reconcile nothing. But when when you say, or when the you listen to people talk about this, and how, you know oneness, um and I hate using those words, isness, oneness, amness, beingness, but it's the whole thing. If you include oneness as everything that there is and possibly could be, again, I'm just
and
trying to
and and
reconcile
and not
nothing.
and not.
And not right. So in order for, like you said, for all these happenings to occur, they have to occur out of something. So that must be the nothing, right? So it's almost like, again, if you have consciousness, just pure consciousness, and everything is arising out of that, perhaps the nothingness, but that's the nothingness. Maybe that's it. Because, like you said, it's got to be both, because it's all just one big thing. So it's if it's absolute, it has to include everything and nothing, right? Because it's absolute. That's the definition of absolute. There's no boundary. It is literally, that's the definition of absolute. It has everything. So all that. So I'm trying. I think I feel like I'm starting to understand when they say everything comes out of nothingness, or no thing, or this. When there's any happening, whatever it is, it's just, it's like a nothingness. It's like on a scale that, it's so it's so counterintuitive to what we experience on a day-to-day life, because we're so inundated with some things, with happenings all day long, from the minute we wake up till we go to bed. Something is happening. So to say that on the other half of the equation is just nothing, we're just so unfamiliar with that portion of it, you don't it doesn't exist as far as me is concerned because I never go there. I'm never in nothing. Maybe that's what deep sleep is. I don't know, but I think that's starting to fit in the picture. But I still struggle with that. It's a tough one.
Yeah, well, you see, I suppose sure, that's that's what's happening there in the sense of like that's the struggle of me trying to know the world, and it's like a little fucking loop that goes on of um words, a bunch of words trying to reconcile with a bunch of other words. It's like a leaf on a tree saying, I'm a leaf on this tree, and the tree is going, okay, that's what that, and then somebody else is going, I'm not on this tree, I am the tree, and the tree is going doing nothing because the tree is just being the tree, and everybody is going, well, I'm going to get there now, I'm going to get to liberation, and that's all the tree happening for
Yes,
itself, and it's never never going
that's a
anywhere
great
probably.
that's a great analogy. I think that's an excellent analogy, and it I can feel that I can feel how that would resonate with people because I can't remember who else I was listening to, but they were speaking along the same lines where it was one of the interviews on you've probably seen Conscious.tv with
Yeah.
Ian McNay. He's done it, a whole bunch a whole bunch of interviews,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, you're
And I watched a few of those, and he was interviewing one gentleman. I can't remember his name, but he was making a very similar point about, and I think Tony Parsons mentioned this recently in one of his talks, where this idea of a separate me and an individual is a uniquely human phenomenon, um, which hits home for me. That seems to be right. And this guy was saying something similar about how if you would see a squirrel running through your yard, if you could have a conversation with the squirrel, you would never be like, so how's it going with your squirrel life? And are you attaining all your squirrel goals?
yeah.
And just the absurdity of that is just, and if you apply the same logic that we apply to ourselves to anything outside of humans, it becomes absolutely absurd.
Mhm.
Even the things that we think are fairly conscious or aware, or intelligent creatures, they're still that they don't struggle with any of this stuff. They're not acting. None of them are acting. They're just
No.
doing. They're being. They're just amming, as I think as Peter Russell would say, amming. They're
You
they're
see,
easily.
and the only problem with that is that you're amming and I'm amming too. Though you see, the only problem is then there's the kind of view that okay, well they're at one with the universe and I'm not because I feel separate, and there is a place that is not separate. But then that's you see, I don't in separation. That's there is nothing outside of separation. It's just separation, and that's still this.
That's still it.
Still this, even though you hear
Yes.
that over and over again,
Yes.
it can't be a case of somebody over there is at peace. Because that's still, first of all, it's a word, somebody. You still then believe in people who are going somewhere and have arrived. So you're still locked in a story, and your story, and as far as the story that you've put on them, and they're telling you, no, there is no the story, there's nothing, whatever, and you're still going,
Yeah.
yeah, but because, and yet still, like we said at the very start, when all the pretense is over, all the pretending, all that's left is utter unknowing, it's utter lost in fucking in this somehow, and that's. But you see, the reality is you can't suddenly turn around. You wonder, going, okay, well, I mean, isn't it about time we all went out and started playing in the fields again? Because this is
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Everywhere you go, it's deadly serious, and everything you look at is absolute contrary to. there's this that like really, you know, it's serious.
Yes.
But where would you be going? Like, what would you be doing? It's just the only thing you can kind of go. Oh, what the fuck? And then you know what's this is. There's
Yeah.
just we're lost in absolute fucking eternity, and we're going absolutely nowhere. Anybody want to come out and kick a football? I'd love to have a game. Or anybody want to go for a few pints? More like, you know, because you are.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
it. Like this is timeless eternity, and it's a. It's, I don't want to say it's not even. This is the beginning and end of everything, and we're all, you know, sitting around, and that vast majority of it is serious. So maybe
Yes.
that's.
And I find it, I totally agree. And I find it totally amazing that, as the more you listen to these things, and I'm glad because you brought this up too, because it's kind of like a reality check. People, and I said this, you know, when it's a strictly human phenomenon that we seem to be separate, and we go about this acting and all things like that. And it's almost, when you hear about it and you listen to a lot of talks about it, it almost starts to sound like it's a bad thing, or that it's wrong, or that, you know, we're like, all 99.999% of us that are still seeking are just completely off the grid, and we're doing this whole thing wrong. And nothing could be further from the truth, right? I mean, even if we are lost in our, and Alan Watts explained this in one of his lectures. I don't know, it hit home for me too, and why I started to not take it so seriously, even though I find it incredibly fascinating. But even if I'm still just lost in my acting and in my little personal me, that's all, that's still it. So that's the adventure. So if somebody who was like Tony or Kenneth would see, you know, somebody else over there who's, they can clearly see is lost in their acting, and and being a me, it's not, there's not, absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, go on and go do it, and get as far out there as you can. See how crazy and wacky you can get, and how much fun you can have believing this story. What's wrong with that? There's absolutely, that's not the, there's no right or wrong here.
Well,
And I think people get, I just,
yeah,
I think people get hung up on that idea that they shouldn't be like this, and I don't think that's the case. That doesn't resonate right.
it's unavoidable to be being like. I mean, I think all that's happening really in those meetings at best, it's kind of hi, woo. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
best. It's kind of woo,
Yes,
hi, woo,
yeah.
and
I'm having a blast over here.
yes, well, no, well, it's kind of hi, yeah, well, yeah, look, and they actually just can't believe. Sometimes, like Kenneth would talk about, doesn't give a fuck if there's only two people in his meeting. It's not like he's going, oh God, I need to have loads of people here. He's amazed that three other people are listening to him go, wee, woo, hi, because it just seems like, but still that's everything is contained within. So if that's the case, then every single tiny little fucking thing, appearing as good and bad, is it. So
Yes.
and that's the beginning and end of it. That's the water going out of the sink, and this is it. And we'll fucking reboot again, and we'll go wherever the fuck we'll go. And then the paradox is life does go on, things happen, and appear
Hmm.
to. I hate the word appear to happen, but it's like that, you know. Still, this it's still this, isn't it? Whatever is
Yes.
happening is still this, and that
Still
can't
this.
be.
Absolutely.
And that can be the frustration with this, or not frustration with this, or okayness, or ease, or peace, or blah 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 blah. It's still
Yeah.
all bullshit, though. The only thing is hi.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. You got it. I mean, it's still all. It still is what it is. It's still all that. And I was driving the other day, and that similar thought came to me, where I think I was watching one of your podcasts, and I felt very close to what you guys were saying, and there was good resonance. I'm like, I feel like I'm close to that breakthrough, or that thing. And you know, it was great. And then it was late, like halfway through the day later, I was driving to go pick up my daughter, and a thought occurred to me. God, I feel 1,000 miles away from where I felt this morning. Now I can feel like I felt like all clear and I had this clarity in the morning. And then it was later in the afternoon and my mind was just full of shit. And I had too many things to do. And I'm like, God, I'm a million miles away. And then all of a sudden it just struck me. Well, even if I am a million miles away, that's still it.
Yeah.
Whether I feel like I'm right there and I'm perfectly clear, or my mind is just a pile of mud, still it. So why am I trying to discriminate against my own state of being when it's still all it?
Well, do you see the aberration in this seems to be the the loop of the record that goes. I'm getting very close now, but that seems to be all of eternity. Just that sensation in a record loop. She said a good old conversation there. Myself and Frank. I'm very close. I'm
Yeah,
cracking it today. And
yeah,
I had a good chat with Jim there, so I think really I've really nailed it there. I'm nearly
yeah,
there. So but it's always and all that seems to be the beginning and end of eternity. Just that movement of I'm nearly there now, and then it'll
yeah,
be, oh fuck, I was doing really well, and then I got that fucking email from that prick who just worded that email wrong, and I'm projecting totally onto how he's read that email, and I'm going,
yeah,
I'm so over there. I lost it again,
yeah,
but it's the same record. That's just the guitar solo. I think
yes,
there's the chorus. The chorus is I'm getting close. I'm feeling good today, actually. Woo! And then the
yeah,
next chorus and then the break away from the chorus is I'm fucking so far away. And then it comes back with the chorus
yeah,
again, goes, actually, I get
yes.
close.
I know. It's like a big tease. I mean, and it keeps it's amazing how it keeps pulling you in, and we're always just nearly there. We're
Yeah.
we're just we're nearly there, and one of these days we're gonna realize that being nearly there, is
Yeah.
it. I assume, or I don't know, but it's that record, like it's on continuous repeat. It never stops, and it's just, yeah, it's like the peaks and valleys, and it's just you're riding the wave, and it's just it doesn't end. And it's fascinating. And I mean, each one of these talks, I mean, you've talked to so many people now, and each one it's a unique talk with a unique person with a unique take on things, and it's completely fascinating. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing this all the time, right?
Yeah, well, you see, it just so happens that I mean, like, it just so happens, like, I mean, we could break down how this conversation happens. We could break it down into a, a gazillion explanations to how finally here we're talking, right? But you'd probably have to start. But if you really wanted to get to the explanations to how this is happening and really fucking nail it, you'd have to go before you were born. And then in reality, you'd have to go before your parents were born, your grandparents were born, and you'd have to go
Yeah,
to the beginning of wherever the fuck the beginning apparent that the beginning is, right to the beginning, and that still
yeah,
wouldn't get to the explanation as to this happening here. And that's
yeah,
so, like, you could start with, well, we sent each other emails and we chatted and then I came back to you, but that's not the complete story. But it's enough for the brain will just go, yeah, that's how it
yes,
happened. We sent each other emails, you saw the podcast. But the truth then, really though, if the brain really wants to get to the heart of how anything is happening, it won't tell, it just likes the top line. That's why we like headlines in newspapers. You don't bother reading the full article, and the brain would just
sure,
go, it'll stop. It can't go because it's impossible.
yeah,
It's so far away from any explanation ever. Everything is that, but still we kind of just want to know, so that for the most part, navigating through this thing isn't so fucking chaotic and whereas at the end of the day, like this is the timeless eternity, and um, even then, it sounds too much like a nice place to talk about, doesn't it? This is the Garden of
Yes.
Eden. This is the Garden of Eden, and uh, but then it's
Well,
all
and
just a load of shit like it.
it is, and you literally you just drove yourself all the way back to, trying to understand the sequence of events to how we got here, to literally you get to the point where there's nothing left anymore. Literally, or there's no place, there's nothing prior anymore. You can't go back any further. And even then, like you said, it wouldn't explain how we got here,
You
because
get
it's just
you
it's
get to the devastation of the nuclear bomb of nothing. I think that's where I mean,
of
and
nothing and
of
of not
nothing,
knowing.
and that's the unexplainable eternity. That's the
It's just
kind
you're
for me.
never gonna know.
That was heartache. It was absolute heartache. That's where my heart broke in a good way, again and again and again and again and again.
Really,
The
I
end
find that
was
idea
the
very
nothing.
liberating.
There you go. It just depends, I think. I mean, I can't say that it's a bad heartache. It's just a heartache. It
Yeah,
felt like a heartbreaking. That that there's the safety of living in the world where everything is possible to be known. It begins and fuck it ends. Like it ends, and then this sense of the unexplainable for the mind is the breaking of the mind and the breaking of whatever, but then at the same time
there's
living
relief.
is relief, because living in knowns for eternity, that's where insanity, that's
Yes,
you want to eat insanity, then try and know this.
yeah,
Eat you a
yes,
fucking, and I have experienced that too. Went to the ends of the universe and it was hell on earth. That they
yeah.
trying to know this happening.
And then you get to the point where it just breaks. I mean, you literally just probably you've either broken your brain in the process, or you just utterly are so exhausted. You just accept the fact that it's not going to be known, and I've accepted that fact, and it's
I
at
can't
first there
say
was a
that.
sense of
Yeah,
I guess at first there was a wonderful sense of relief. But now I feel like I'm in this situation where, okay, I know I'm not going to know it, but now what the hell do I do? Now, I mean, my brain is still going to 90 miles an hour, right? So
yeah.
it's still like like I was explaining, I feel like consciousness is fundamental and there's nothing prior. So, so how do I sit with that? How do, how does that affect my life? It doesn't, it doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't, nothing changes, I guess. I mean, I guess I don't know. It, I mean, we wouldn't be having this conversation maybe if I wasn't at that place, or would we? I don't know. It's
If you
almost
weren't at what place?
if I wasn't at the place where I felt like I had accepted the fact that I'm not going to figure this out. Like you said, you went to the ends of the earth to try to know. And when you said, if you try to know all these things or try to know this, you will go insane. You will break yourself trying. And so I gave it up in that regard. However, I'm now it now it's now I'm at a loss for words. Now I'm just it's still the same. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's still the same in that now I'm still I'm still having these conversations with you, because it's just an enjoyable thing to do, and I'm not claiming that I have anything. I'm just saying that I've accepted the fact that I am not going to know. I'm not going to know everything. Where I go, I guess where I go from there, I don't know yet. Where do you go from there?
Can I
Once you
ask
once you
you?
were broken,
Can I
Yeah, go
ask
ahead.
you? Can I ask you? When you were saying those last few sentences, does it feel to you that again that it's probably a little bit of a story you're launching into, or not? When you if I
Um,
about what
yeah,
do I do with my life and where do I get to, and does it feel like it's the, or does it feel like just a little bit of a reboot of a story again about uh, in your just
yeah, no,
yeah, I'm just
it was
curious.
falling. Yes, it absolutely felt like I was trying to see what the next line in my script was.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's all it is then.
100%. Yeah, you know,
I
you nailed
mean,
it.
I haven't a clue though, but that's all it is that though. It's okay. That's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
it's not amazing, it's the wrong word, but that's all that's happening, isn't it? Like, I mean, there's no, you see, I think the way it seems to work is that being a human, the movement is always like like the flag, and it's always like wanting to put down the flag on the land to say, I've got to the moon, and I've got to the new America, and I've got to wherever, I've got to, and I've arrived. The problem for the person is everything. It's all just the way it is, though. I mean, that's
Well,
the,
you think
all
the
we're doing is doing high, like, oh, we're really, I mean, that's the end of the conversation in the sense where all we're doing here is going hi. Isn't this fucking
yeah,
mad?
yeah, and where our characters are exchanging their stories.
Yeah.
That's essentially what's happening here. We're exchanging our stories, but in that, I find it, you know, very interesting, and I think when I want to say, and when you were interviewing Tony in Zero and One, he made a statement about how words. He was talking about words, and how for each individual, the words can detangle the thoughts or the actors that we've all become. They can start to detangle that, and I that really resonates with me too, and that, and which is why I think I keep going back over and over again to listen to as many people as I can and different takes on this subject, because you feel like you're starting to unravel a little bit when you hear people put things in certain phrases, or how they speak about this stuff, and but that key to unlock is so unique to each individual that it's just it's a the I think that's where they talk about the energetic thing, where this is you get a little bit of a release every time you have these conversations, but it's so unique to the individual.
And do you mind me asking you about the and it's great being the part of the questioner. Do you mind me asking you, when you talk about the key to unlock, the words are, do you, would you, that's probably, does that sound like a bit of a story as well?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it is. But I can't. I don't know how else to say it anymore. Yeah, I mean, it's, you're right. I'm unlocking my story. I mean,
Yeah.
but that's a story. That's still a story, right? I'm still scripting, but you get to the point where, or I feel like I'm. I don't know how else to. Again, it comes back to, if I guess if I wasn't scripting or if I wasn't acting, then we would just be sitting here in silence, which would be fine, right? Wouldn't make for a very interesting podcast, but it would
Huh.
just be silence.
You see, it was, well, I mean, I've included a few toilet breaks in some of my classics over the years. One with Boris was great. I was delighted with that one. You see, it's a kind of still, I suppose, the biggest fucking thing that I can only describe from myself, maybe the biggest thing was a projection that, you see, I can see why people talk about the no center and the no person, because but it all can seem more too much like a carrot. But the biggest thing for me was living in beginnings and ends. So I was here, they were over there, and they had arrived, so they knew something. that I didn't know and that I could get to a place. They definitely, it can't be just this, it can't be just this. It has to be a better this, because I still operate in beginnings and ends. Over there is they've got it. And I'm going to listen to them because that might unlock something here. And but the truth of every time I would say that, or I'd say to Kenneth that the truth of that is though, and you see, that's why people say it's already definitely the case, because you kind of can almost sense the movement of the story rebooting. You can almost sense that
Yeah.
projection on to another to say that they have arrived. Where is the arrival in fucking timeless, locationless eternity? Where, if there is no
Yeah.
other, where you need another to compare it to? So then there'd have to be a here and a there. There'd have to be over there, a place to get to. There you go. It all sounds like fucking bullshit then. But it's still though, the amount of times when I'd have the conversation and I'd be kind of going, yeah, but they, and still every time I did it, I kind of knew I was beginning this. I was starting to tell. I was doing the acting story again, which you do.
It's so easy to slip into it, isn't it?
But
It's so subtle. It's so like you don't even know you're doing it. Like it's the you and your brain wants that story so bad that it probably almost tricks you. And it's so easy to just to feed that story, and you're very quick to catch it.
The
But
killer is
it's
the absolute killer. Then is where more than likely everybody goes mental. Is you're not doing anything, and then you just go. But you know what? Now fuck off. That's the killer part. And I
yeah,
think it's actually pointless even saying it because it makes the person go, what do you mean now? What are you saying? What are you saying to me?
yeah.
Um,
But
is it
it's all it too, though, right?
has to be
It's
it?
all
Yeah, has to be. Yeah.
it's all still it, which is so unintuitive and paradoxical, and it's like it literally just it blows your brain apart when you try to make any sense of it. Because even when you slip or you're acting, you're acting. Um,
Yeah.
that's still it.
Yeah, that's the happening. Yeah, it is the case that we believe that. See, when you this is held here, this can be fixed, and like we were saying earlier, life, the journey of life, the path. Let's say this thing where you're getting to somewhere A to B, which is advertised everywhere. So the story reboots within itself everywhere you go. It's everything you look at, most every conversation that is had all day, every day. It's everybody going, rah, 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 get to business, rah, 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 we need to get this done, rah, rah, rah. Everybody's getting somewhere. Everybody everywhere is getting some. Nobody's, and you can't go, there's no point going, I know it's all serious, but like, anybody want to go out and play? I know, I know what you're saying,
Yeah,
but is there anybody, and it's, no, but it's everybody, the roles are played, and that's it. Like,
yeah. It's like can we just pause and take a break from all the acting just for a little while? It's kind of like that sounds like what you're saying. Like we're
yeah,
all we know we're acting. We are acting. We know we're acting. We got to play these roles every day. I got
yeah,
to act to pay the bills and this and the other. But can we just take a break from it? I think
yeah,
and it's it's the end of acting. It's really it's the end of acting. I keep coming back to that. Or that keeps coming into my mind for some reason.
yeah, it's great actually talking about because the killer is that you know, when you hear over and over you're not doing anything, it's kind of like the reality is that it is all just happening, and then the brain takes that and goes, okay, it's all just happening. So I'm, you know, or I am just okay. I can live with I'm just happening, and then that dissatisfaction comes back in again, going, am I just happening? Is this the case? Have I got it? Am I here? Have I arrived? And it's then the record of
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
am I nearly there yet?
yeah.
Am I nearly there yet?
Yes.
I'm going to
Yeah.
be there, and that's fucking
Yeah.
yeah, man.
It's amazing.
It's a bit nuts, all right. Like it's the greatest show in town. Whatever the fuck is happening, this is the only show. This is the only gig there is. Like,
It is, and it's got my full attention. I mean, that's it's. I can't get away from it.
yeah. No,
Literally, you
no,
literally can't get away from it.
no, you can't. No, you can't catch. Where would it be? Like, still
Yeah.
be.
Where would you be? Right.
Where would you get to? Yeah, I mean, I remember I used to keep saying, but I used to say, yeah, but you know, but you know that this is it. Then that's you
Yeah.
see, it's every single tiny word. It's like when we had the chat there, and I said, well, do you know what's happening? Do you know what's happening?
You never can. You never do. You never, ever, ever, ever. At least in my experience, you don't. Nobody. I can see why people say nobody knows anything. One of the guys you just interviewed, I can't remember his name. Um, kept saying that over and over again. Nobody really knows anything because you can't really know anything. Because, like we were saying before, right now, where we all exist for eternity, it is impossible to know anything. As soon as you utter anything, it's gone.
I think that's
And that's
the
it.
yeah. As soon as you utter a word, we've done a great job for not for not saying anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I got a message from I think he's a nice guy, but he really went on a rant in one comment in the podcast, going, "Why the fuck are you talking about? Why are you talking about this?" Oh, and it was a big long comment, like, and I said, well, you know, I said, well, you know, it's in the same way you could just have written, "This is bullshit," and left it at that. You went and said a load of words. So it's the exact same thing. And then he came back and went, rah, 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 you're right. But this is bullshit is mean. But yeah. um, anyway, there we go, man. We had a good chat there. We must chat again. It's
Yeah, that was great.
looking at the time. Yeah, it fucking flew. Yeah.
It did. No, I thoroughly enjoyed it. That was great, Frank.
No, likewise.
Excellent.
Fair play. It's really nice. It's nice to jump off the cliff, but in this thingy.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's just it's like I was like we were emailing just the or maybe I was just desperate for interaction with to talk about somebody with this. Like I said, this is truly my first conversation,
Yeah.
and it's utterly fascinating. It is.
Hi, if you like the conversation that I just had and you'd like more, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you.